Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. So today, we're going to be talking about where you settle your aft end. The different types of chairs that you can find around Battleship New Jersey. Now, believe it or not, we are not doing this video because we've done over 950 other videos and we're running out of topics. We're doing this because we recently did some research and found way more types of chairs, particularly here in the mess decks, than one would expect. And it's honestly a little bit baffling how often they changed the chairs out here. So first, let's talk about some of the types that are around for a long period of time, and then we'll go into some of those weird changes. So this type of fixed mess deck table that I'm sitting on, we here at the museum refer to as the McDonald's style. This is very much a 1980s type of mess deck bench. We have seen these in a number of other ships that we've stripped parts off of, and we've even cut some of those out so that we had spare chairs. Because during the overnight program, the kids sit in these chairs and they swivel, so they rock them back and forth until they break. So we pick up replacements of these because they were pretty prolific, probably late 70s through the 80s and into the 90s. So these are a fixed type of chair that really limits a lot of things. One, because they're fixed, you can't really use this space for other things. There are times in the ship's career when the mess decks were communal spaces and all of the tables and chairs were movable so that you could reconfigure to play movies down here or to do classes or for church services or things like that. And as the size of the crew goes down, specific spaces for these things are installed and the mess deck seating becomes more fixed. The other issue with these types of chairs, besides they give you like zero back support, is they don't have a whole lot of space here. They are very much made for that 18-year-old sailor who is in Navy shape and not necessarily for everyone. It is also worth noting that the chairs are just sitting on posts in here and they can be pulled out. And the tables, likewise, are sitting on a post and they can be removed, which gives you a relatively flat deck. However, that post is still welded to the deck and is a tripping hazard. It's not just a smooth, flat space like you would have seen when this space was originally built. So, for example, when the ship is in mothballs, we have footage of this space with all the tables taken out and like piled up and boxes and things stored in here instead. So you can move these, but it doesn't make a perfect clear space. Today's video is brought to you by Established Titles. Established Titles uses the ancient Scottish tradition of making landowners a laird or lady, lord or lady, by simple merit of owning property in Scotland. So Established Titles allows you to buy as little as 1 square foot of property in Scotland to become a Scottish lord or lady. This is a prefix like Mr. or Mrs. that you can put on things like your plane tickets, your credit cards, and even your dating profiles. That one's my favorite. They send you a certificate like this one. I'm Lord Ryan Szymanski now. Established Titles makes a great last-minute gift idea. Remember, the holiday season is approaching. And they donate to One Trees Planted and Trees for the Future. I absolutely love this environmentalism about the company. Remember to use the discount code BATTLESHIP to get 10% off your next purchase. And the first 200 people who purchase will get a plot right next to mine in the same kingdom. Established Titles makes a great last-minute gift, and they're running an amazing sale right now in addition to our discount code. So go over there soon. Go to establishedtitles.com/battleship and use the discount code BATTLESHIP to get your gifts now and support our channel and our museum. Now, a type of chair that is consistent throughout the ship's whole career is this type over here, called a tanker chair. And this type comes in a couple of variations. Technically, this is also a tanker chair. So in some instances, they have enclosed armrests like these. I believe these came out of the Chief Petty Officer's mess when that space was gutted by the museum earlier on. There are also chairs like these in the wardroom that are blue. You will also see these without the enclosed arms. They've got the metal armrests and just a flat piece up top to rest your arms on. Those tend to be in staterooms and offices. And you may even see them without any arms at all, or the even cheaper version like these. These types of chairs seem to go all the way back to World War II. We've got images of very similar pattern or early type tanker chairs in World War II. They are metal, so they aren't going to burn, which was a major concern. Earlier battleships would have often had wooden furnishings, so that creates all sorts of issues. And then this pattern becomes very popular in the 50s and 60s, and you see it a tremendous amount in government facilities across the board, and they just don't break. So you still see them in service today. I've gone on strip trips for vessels that are near contemporary, things like the aircraft carrier Kennedy, taken out of service in the 2000s, and they have chairs like these on board. Some of the chairs that we have, I took off of that ship, and others. We do not have nearly as many of these chairs as we're supposed to. Why is that? Because when this ship was in mothballs, other ships came on board and took them for their own uses. So these things just never break, and they just keep being used down the line. There are also types of these chairs that are more like swivel chairs. Instead of having 4 legs, it's like this sort of thing, but it's on either a spinning base or a base with wheels. And we don't believe that any of the wheeled chairs would have been on this ship. Wheeled chairs, even like office-style chairs, tend to not do well on a rolling ship. But I have seen instances of those sorts of chairs where they just take the wheels off and they're more or less permanently affixed. Traveling all the way back in time, we've got the wooden-style World War II mess benches. And this is what the ship is originally built with. We talked about how wood was a fire hazard. Hopefully you aren't hearing that for the first time from me today. That was an acceptable thing. These were cheap and mass producible, so you see them used pretty extensively on Navy ships. Some ships, like the destroyer escorts, have them fixed on 2 posts. Some of them, like the Battleship, have them movable so that you can reconfigure the space, like we talked about earlier. It has cast iron legs and fittings, so relatively easy. You're not using steel or aluminum or other more critical war features. It does have some brass and some copper fittings, so it's a little bit gold-plated. But something really cool about these is they're ready-made shoring timbers. You have some damage to the ship, and you can just start grabbing these and wedging them in place to prevent an issue while you're waiting for a damage control party to show up with the actual shoring timbers from the rack a couple compartments forward. So these are really interesting. We've done a video on these benches not too long ago. Part of why we're doing this video today is we recently had some volunteers finish varnishing these just yesterday. A young man who's applying to the Naval Academy, getting his some service to help with his application, volunteering on board, and his family who supports him did all the cleanup and varnish. These were donated by somebody who worked at the Philadelphia Navy Yard and says that they came off of this ship in 1967 when this ship was being reactivated for Vietnam and got a different pattern of chairs. And when we did the original video, we took that at face value. And still, it's a possibility. Like I said, we see types of chairs on here that date all the way back to World War II. It is possible and likely that even as these wooden type benches are changed out for other patterns, that they are being taken into berthing spaces or other parts of the ship. The ship does not change much from World War II through Korea. So we assumed that the ship retained this style of mess deck bench throughout the 40s and 50s. However, we have some new evidence that seems to indicate that they removed these wooden style benches and replaced them with fixed seating sometime in the early 50s. And that's very surprising. So it got me thinking, why could that have been? And these seem to be fixed tables like these with benches, not individual chairs. And the benches actually have a back on them, unlike these. So a couple of reasons why that is. Again, the wood burns. These benches are stored, both the benches and tables are stored in overhead racks during the day. Part of why this is done is because with your expanded World War II crew, there was room for additional berthing on the mess decks. So at night when meals were done, the benches get slung in the overhead and then hammocks get slung and people sleep here. And then during the day, they trice up their hammocks and put out the benches and tables. So we don't have people berthing in the mess decks anymore. There is a film projector booth installed on the fantail in the 1950s. So it seems less like they're doing movies in here, so they don't need to reconfigure the whole space. They're doing that up on deck. And hopefully this is just me being cynical, but in the late 40s, early 50s, the military desegregates. So you no longer have your minorities doing all of your mess and steward jobs. And so you're not forcing them to take these down and put them up and do all this work all the time. It is becoming more fair and equal, and maybe part of that is going to fixed benches that you don't have to manually move around. So those are three possibilities that I've thought up. You don't have people berthing here. It's a fire hazard. You might not be reconfiguring the space, and then maybe it has to do with the type of people who are now stewards and cooks. Interestingly, many of the ship's fittings are replaced when she's reactivated in the 1960s. So this seems to also include the mess deck benches. So they go from the fixed tables with fixed benches to fixed tables with fixed seating, and they seem to be metal seats with like a single column that comes up the back and then a slat for your backrest, but otherwise very similar to these. However, by 1969, these have been replaced already. So the ship is only in service for about a year, 1968 to 1969, and yet they go through at least two different types of benches. They remove what was here in 1950 from the 1950s, put on something new and similar, and then replace that by the end of the ship's service. Now, before I give my possible reason for that, how do we know all this? These are the sorts of things that I love to research. How did the ship change over time? But people aren't going around and taking pictures of the chairs that they sat in. Where are we finding this? Most of the pictures that people donate are like, well, I was on another ship and here's a picture of New Jersey sailing by, or I was on New Jersey and here's a picture of me and my two buddies standing on the exterior deck. Fortunately, the ship had photographers assigned. That was a Navy rating. And some of the pictures that those photographers took were included in the ship's cruise books. These are very, very similar to high school yearbooks, and there are a good number of them throughout the ship's service life, and many of them are available at a link in the description below, and it's navysite.de/cruisebooks, and they have a ton of cruise books for a ton of ships, including the majority of Battleship New Jersey's scanned, and you can buy copies of those scans, or you can just flip through them. So we, of course, have copies of all the originals that we can flip through, but you guys from the comfort of your home can look at most of them there. And as you're going through, you see pictures of guys sitting on the mess decks eating, and if you zoom in on those pictures, you can see what they're sitting on, and it's absolutely crazy how often they change. So, the change in the 1960s. The last style of chair that we see are what I call the plastic eggshell type that are extremely 60s and 70s. We even have a few of them left on board that by the 1980s are being used in dental. But we've got one picture from one of the cruise books as the ship is being decommissioned in 1969 of just several stacks of these chairs sitting in the mess decks, which means that they've gone from the fixed tables and chairs to these. Why would they do that? Well, one of the steps in decommissioning the ship seems to be removing all the mess deck tables and chairs so that you've got this space to use as storage for boxes, so you can bring down a lot of the dehumidification equipment that you're going to use while the ship is in mothballs. You need room to move that around. However, you've still got crew members assigned to the ship doing the work. And you don't want them to lose a significant part of their day walking across the shipyard in the middle of winter to some mess facility there and then having to walk back. You want to keep the ship's onboard galley and mess equipment going for as long as possible. So my suspicion is, because we only see these while the ship is being decommissioned, that they get rid of this early on in the process to be able to move stuff through, and they still have to have tables and chairs for the guys that are left. And it's not a full ship's crew, it's maybe 800 or 1,000 guys. So they just bring in some that they have at the Navy Yard, and then most of those go off the ship. It seems like the contractors who do inspections on these ships, some of them tend to bring chairs on and set up spaces where they can like sit and nap while the ship is in mothballs. So it may be that the ship's crew finds some of these chairs and puts them in dental in the waiting room, and that's why we still have some. All speculation, but all things that have been known to happen on ships. One other type of chairs that I haven't mentioned yet are there are also, during World War II, a bunch of stools that are attached to a metal pillar that go under benches, and these tend to be around Turret 3's barbette and around the sides of the mess decks, and those are fixed, and they're just round stools. If you go on ships like Massachusetts, Alabama, North Carolina, they still have these because they're in their World War II configuration. And New Jersey would have had them all over the place too, as supplement to the movable benches. So those would have been around the perimeter of the room, and then the middle would have been filled with these benches. Well, I honestly can't believe that you guys are still here after 20 minutes of talking about the different types of chairs that get installed on the mess decks on Battleship New Jersey. I'm really impressed, but thank you for coming with me on this journey through some of my recent pedantic research onto the ship. What type of chairs do you think were the best kind? Let us know in the comment section down below. What type did your ship or facility have if you served in the military? Or a lot of these same tables and chairs my elementary school had. What about you guys? Do any of these types seem familiar to you? Let us know in the comment section down below. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from a number of businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate the support, especially from today's sponsor, Established Title. Remember, they're running a big sale, and there's a link in the description below. Remember to use the discount code BATTLESHIP for 10% off. It not only supports them, it supports the museum and our channel. You can support the channel by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find out about us and our weird research. Thanks for watching.